So you and the environment. We're going to make a little review about you and the environment, and basically we're just going to go through it taking into consideration the different benefits that it has for us, not only as a citizens, but as well as economic participants in seeing how we take care of the environment can affect many, many different aspects of our life or of society. For example, first, we're going to see a little definition that is protecting the natural environment. Sometimes we take things for granted. That means that we think that since we always have access to electricity, to water, to the internet, to many other things, we always believe that they are going to be there for us whenever we need it. However, there are some cases in which these kind of resources, you know that already, we have talked about, well, you know already what's a renewable resource and non-renewable resource. I don't need to explain to you that, but basically it's, we take things for granted. That I always will have water at home, I will always have internet, I will always have electricity. However, some of the sources and things that we have for granted may disappear as time goes by. For example, as I was telling you, you always use electricity, water, internet, and other services without thinking that we will not have them in the near future or in any situation, okay? We always, when you get home, for example, when you get out of school normally and you get home, the first thing that you say, okay, I will go home and maybe watch some Netflix, or maybe I will check my social media, or I will watch these videos, or I will work on this homework. And we depend on the internet and the electricity as well. But imagine you get home one day and there is no electricity at all, and you cannot do all the things that you have been planning for the afternoon. Therefore, we don't think of that kind of situations. We don't think of what may happen if, in this case, some of these resources starts to lack. So that is why we become wasteful and use other resources without thinking how to preserve them. Nevertheless, being a model citizen implies the responsibility of caring for the environment. Sometimes we use many of the resources that we have without any conscience, right? We waste water sometimes. Like, for example, let's talk a little bit more about water in detail. Like, we use water for many different actions, especially right now that we are in this sanitary emergency, that we need to keep ourselves clean and the things that we have clean. But in normal circumstances, when we don't have this virus, we're talking about things like, for example, washing your car, washing the dishes, washing your teeth, and many other actions that we do with water. But for example, there is a little study that says that for you to wash a car, you don't need to use the hoop. You just need to use a little bucket of water, and that's enough to wash a car completely. But normally we like to have the garden hose and everything, you know, throwing water to the car and everything. And we waste more water than we need to do the certain things. Or when we're brushing your teeth, we are opening the faucet, but then we keep the water running, but we don't close it again, and then we're wasting water. But we don't think about these little actions that in the future may have greater complications, not only on the lack of resources, but in the economic standpoint as well, because that means that the less resources that we have, the most expensive they become. Or the more we have it, the cheaper they become. Probably if you have been following the news, I can give you a clear example of this, that right now the oil barrel is just $1. Just imagine the oil, the petroleum, the things that we have been fighting for many years, and the different prices, and people who have created their different fortunes based on oil, now they are selling it almost for free. Why? Because there is an abundance of that product, and because of the situation that we're living, people isn't buying it. Nobody's going to buy oil at this moment. Nobody's going to buy gasoline and things like those ones because they are not necessary at this moment on. Therefore, as you see, is this the market that is offering something and the demand of the people. But the same happens with other resources. The more somebody demands a resource, the more it is going to lack. Therefore, it becomes more expensive to get. And in this way, we are not saying that in this case, the sources will become more expensive, but they will become rarely available for us to use. Therefore, it's going to change our life completely in the way that we handle things. So right now, we're going to move on and we're going to talk about different things. This is what I wanted to focus on today. And it's why it's important to care about the environment. When we talk about the environment, we can talk about scarce resources, renewable resources, non-renewable resources, but I don't want to bore you with that because you know all that already. You know that you all know what a renewable resource is, what a non-renewable resource is, what do we do to protect them, what do we do to conserve them. But I want to focus it in three aspects that are the economic, the social, and the environmental. So how these three aspects affects us if we don't take care of the environment. And in three different aspects that are water, air, and I don't remember the other one, but we're going to see it. So the first one is excellent water quality. We're going to use right now the highlighter. So excellent water quality. So what are the benefits for us to have excellent water quality? Well, there are many, many benefits. Starting with, for example, boost the tourism, okay? Why boost the tourism? In the economic standpoint, we're talking about if there is clean and obviously clean and safe water, we can have clean beaches, clean rivers, clean lakes, and everything. And those are places that people visit, places that are related to different uses of water. As well, if we have edible water, that means that people is not going to be preoccupied of drinking the water that we have over here at the country. You probably have the experience that you have interacted with people that is from the United States, or you have probably relatives that are from the States, and when they come, they use to buy water that is probably, for example, from these brands, of these kinds of brands, like the Crystal or Alpina or whatever, but normally it is packaged water. So in this case, why do they buy that kind of water? Because they don't trust the water that we have here, that it comes from nature, or the one that we have from the public services, because they have had experience that sometimes they get sick by drinking that water. Therefore, we can avoid this by making sure that people understand that our water is, it's drinkable, it's okay, that is going to boost tourism. Provides catch for fishing. If in a place there is a safe environment or a water environment for different creatures to coexist, that means the fishing is going to increase. Because when the lakes and the rivers or the oceans are clear of the junk that they have, that means that more and more different life forms can survive over there. Therefore, they can have more different things to grow. We can have more species, and as well it benefits us in the ambit of fishing, and therefore it benefits the economy. Shrimping as well, oyster industry. So that means that the ones that are in charge of looking for shrimps, as well as the ones that are in charge for looking for oysters, decrease healthcare costs. Why? Because water poisoning is a thing. There have been some cases that have been recorded for many, many years. You can investigate about it if you are more interested. But in this case, we have been recorded on cases in which people, they have been poisoned by the water they drink. Why? Because sometimes the water have the different waste of the different companies that they are sending through the ocean. Therefore, that is the water that we get, and that is the water that we consume. And when that happens, we can get some diseases or some problems later on. Provide environment for ecotourism industry. So that means that people can visit lakes, people can visit oceans, and many of those natural attractions that we have in the country. What is the social case in this case? Well, use for surface waters for recreation. We use it for recreation. Have you ever gone to an aquatic park? We use them for that. And for many other things. Decreased prevalence of waterborne disease. So that means that if it is clean, no diseases that are connected to water that is contaminated are going to start appearing so often, because that means that there is not much water that is contaminated that can cause this cause of diseases. Increased quality of life. Of course, drinking water is essential for all of us, for all bodies, and for beings. And that means that if we drink more of it, our quality of life is going to improve, because one of the essential things that we need to survive is going to be improving as well. Increased quality of water entering aquifers. So the aquifers, that means the different conducts that transport the water from one place to another. That is the conducts that we use, for example, to transport water to different houses. So that means that the quality of them is going to be improving as well. And you're not going to be afraid that when you open the faucet, you're going to get sick because you drink water from them. And the environmental. We preserve diversity of water, depends animals and plants, preserve various natural services for aquatic ecosystems, etc. So basically it benefits all the different species that live in an environment in which water is implied. The actions to achieve this goal: use more previous surfaces of all the built sites to decrease stormwater volume or increase infiltration. So, okay, use more previous surfaces. So that means that surfaces that are more resilient or more resistant to different water conditions. So that means that they are not going to be decreasing over time. Prohibit direct discharge of storms water to water bodies. So that means that In this case, we're talking that the water that comes from the storm is stored somewhere. So in that case, we need to avoid that kind of situation because sometimes the water of the storm have a level certain of acidity that is not good for the human body and not good for many other things. That's why, for example, if you live, it has been proven scientifically that if you leave a car, for example, in rainwater for many, many days, it's going to start to oxidate because the different minerals that are on rainwater are different. Why? Because of pollution. Pollution has changed rain to a point that in which they have a level of acidity that they didn't used to have before. So increased water retention time in treatment ponds. So in treatment ponds, we're talking about a processing plant in which they take the water that is non-drinkable and then they go through a process to make sure that it's safe to drink. Use series of treatments ponds before storms enter the water body. So basically we're telling that when the water that comes from the storms, they got to go through a refinement process to separate them from all the different agents that made them acid so they can be something that we can use normally. And use native plants in all buffers and treatment ponds to provide pollutant breakdown and nutrient uptake. So basically, we use the different plants to not only decontaminate the air, but also decontaminate the water as well. So now we're going to focus on one other aspect that is going to be helpful for us in setting up the environment, that is the healthy air quality. How is this going to help economic in this case? Well, when you have healthy air quality, that means that it boosts tourism. Because, for example, I don't know if you have seen China before this crisis of COVID-19, but before, China was of the countries that people wouldn't recommend you to visit that much because the air in China is so polluted that probably if you look up, you wouldn't be able to see the sun. Why? Because in this case, since there are many, many companies and factories working in China, that means that they are polluting the air in a really, really incredible way that people cannot see the sky. That means that not many tourists want China as their destination because of the high level of contamination. But if you go to a place, if you go to a country in which you say, okay, I will go to this country because I will be safe. Everything is going to be fine because the air is not polluted. I can breathe freely. I don't have to be wearing a mask, or I don't have to be wearing something else to keep myself healthy. Decrease healthcare costs because there are many, many diseases that are transmitted through the air. If this were teen health, I would tell you, for example, like a 5 of them, but this is economic, so we don't care about these details. We care about what the consequences are. Decrease erosion of buildings and pavement. Why? Because air has the ability of eroding different surfaces. It has been proven many times that the air has different particles that they break down the molecules of other stuff, therefore they are making weaker over time. Even us, sometimes when we breathe, the quality of air that we are going to breathe is going to have some components that is going to start attacking our cells and different parts of our body. Therefore, they can deteriorate over time. Social, decreased prevalence of circulation and lung-related diseases since there are no pollution in the air. That means that many respiratory diseases cannot be transmitted from person to person or cannot be transmitted through the air. Okay? Increased quality of life for residents. The more clear the air is, the best quality of life are you going to have because the air quality is not affecting your health whatsoever. And finally, we have the environmental, that it preserves water quality by reducing acid precipitation, deposition, and preserves aquatic ecosystems and biodiversity. So basically, all the different ecosystems that we may think of, they're going to be preserved because the air is in really good conditions. So how do we keep it clean? How do we make sure that we keep it healthy? First, we develop efficient, low, no emission public transport systems. Like for example, you're seeing right now with Tesla. That is a creation that is trying to do exactly this. That is a low, no emission public transport system. Well, not public because at the moment it's private, but I hope that as soon as it becomes more popular and in a more viable action, we are going to be switching either public services as well for those ones to make sure that the environment is safer. Use more pervious surfaces on built sites. So I was telling you like more different materials that can be more resistant to different weather conditions. Use efficient coordinated traffic control systems to reduce idle timing. So in this case, we're talking about like traffic jam. It has been proven that it's a really, really great air polluter. Why? Because when people is stuck in the traffic jam, they all have their motors on. Therefore, they are wasting gasoline. Therefore, they are contaminating the air. But if there is a more strict control over this, like for example, you have a schedule, different routes, different directions given to people, this is going to be avoidable in any way, shape, or fashion. Probably not at 100%. We're talking about probably it's going to be avoided in 20, 30% at most, but it's going to be helpful at all. So continue to develop efficient pathways and encourage residents and tourists to use them. So basically to develop the self-conscious or self-awareness of the people to understand that importance of this kind of issue. Maintain and augment that urban forest to update and store carbon filter pollutants, reduce oxygen and prevent ground level ozone formation. So basically that we stop using any kind of product that is going to be able to damage the ozone layer or is going to affect the quality of air that we are breathing. So now we're going to move on to the other factor and the last factor that we're going to talk about, that is the preservation of biodiversity. This is related to the environment as well, because environment is not just made of water and air, but as well of the different creatures or different species that live on it. We have the economic standpoint boosts nature-based tourism. Like for example, ecotourism that is based on safaris or different natural preservations. Like for example, here in the country, we have Pureza, right? That is a natural preservation in which supposedly you can see the animals on the regular habitat. It's supposedly because there are still some limitations that make it far away from reality. So when people come to certain places, like for example, if people go to San Salvador, this is one of the things that they want to see. Or for example, let's go to Africa when you can visit the safaris and all the different expeditions, and you can interact with the animals on their natural habitat. So that is going to boost tourism as well. Preserve food webs that support the economy via fishing industries. So that means that the more diverse the species there are, the more we are going to benefit because we eat the species. We know that we are the ones that are eating chicken, fish, cows, all of the things that you can imagine. Therefore, if we have more of them, we have more sources, we have more resources to where to take the things that we need and incorporate them into the economy. Social provides for natural services, increase quality of life. Natural services, we're talking about that there are many things that come from nature that are beneficial to us. For example, we have natural medicine that in some cases it's really effective, not as effective as chemical medicine, but in this case can be really helpful in some of different cases. Environmental, preserve water and land-based ecosystems that provide natural resources and natural services. Preserve energy flow through the biosphere. So basically we preserve that. We are not only making sure that water and air pollution are kept at a low cost, but also we are making sure to boost those systems. Why? Because if you have seen this in science or any other subject related to that, but basically what happens is that in an ecosystem, every single creature has a role. Even though it's not so well defined or not so commonly known, every single creature has a role in the environment. And some of them, for example, ants are the decomposers of the different animals that die on the floor. Therefore, they decompose them, as well as worms, and they make sure that the earth get the nutrients that they need from that. Therefore, we can have different plants that are going to be benefited from having the air with that richness, and therefore they are going to clean the air as well. So you see, all depends on one another. It's a life cycle that depends on that. Therefore, if we take care of it, all the biodiversity, that means that we are taking care of the other sources as well. The same happens. Probably you have seen before, or you have heard about the, well, not a theory, it's not a theory per se, but the research that says that if bees disappear, probably all the humanity will go extinct. And that is true. Why? Because bees are the first pollinizing agent that plants have. Therefore, when they get the pollen, they try to spread all the different particles of the plants. Therefore, they can continue growing and reproducing. But if they didn't exist, nobody will take that place of an ant. Probably another species will evolve and adapt to do the same kind of action over time, but it's going to take so much time that probably we're going to be dead by then. So natural, how to make care, to make sure that we keep this running healthy and great, preserve natural habitats. So that means that trying to avoid to create fires, trying the illegal hunt of different species and many different stuff. Provide safe travel ways for while between habitats. So that means that there is sometimes from one habitat to another, there is a little thing that is stopping them from coexist together. And normally that is civilization and improvement of the human being. Encourage builders and residents to preserve and augment habitat during site development. So to make sure that, for example, if we're going to make a new city in a certain place, do not chop up all of the trees, because that means not only that they are used to clean the air, but they are also the habitat or the home for many different species that help the environment as well. Discourage use of non-native invasive plants in the landscape. So discourage the use of non-native invasive plants in the landscape. There have been some cases not only about plants, but also about animals and other species that when they are taken from one habitat to another, they start causing some problems because they have different characteristics whatsoever, and they can like disrupt the balance that there is between species. Design roadways to calm traffic and provide wildfires refuges in media. So in this case, we're talking about, for example, if you saw in the news last year, we were talking about the wildfire that was in Australia, that it took many weeks to be dealt with. And that caused the life of many different animals that lose their habitats, and many that they died on that fire. Therefore, we need to think of a way in which this can be avoided. Use wildlife-friendly curbing and non-curbing along roadways. So basically trying to make sure that a road doesn't go through the forest, but around it, to make sure that we don't mess up that ecosystem. And finally, encourage residents and business to use integrated pest management. So that means that in this case, we're talking about a conscious way to use this kind of services to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Okay, let's see. Okay, that is the ending for that topic about you and the environment. And we're about to start with the Entrepreneur Guide for Building a Successful Business. That is the book that we're reading right now. Before we jump into that, I will stop the recording right now just for a minute. First, when we talk about this Entrepreneur Guide for Building a Successful Business, I want to tell you what's my intention of sharing this with you. So first, we have to see the subtitle, Experience and Advice from Hundreds of Small Business Owners, Operators in 14 countries. Basically, this book is going to be essential and beneficial for you if you want to develop the business idea later on in the future. We have worked on the product at school, and probably thanks to this situation, we're not going to be able to do the presentation. But as I said before, the product is yours, the idea is yours, the company is yours. You can do with that whatever you want, whatever you see fit. Therefore, this book is a guide for you, because by doing that kind of project, by creating your own product, you are not only doing it because of a grade, but because you're becoming an entrepreneur. And if you remember, what's an entrepreneur? It's a person that creates a business idea or a business by its own and try to develop different situations or apply different techniques to make sure that it works. So what am I dealing right now is like, I'm not thinking of you as students, but as entrepreneurs, as people that can create a company that later on in the future can have an impact and can create a market for yourself. Therefore, you can have another source of income later on. Sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not work, but it's like, for example, it's essential to try. If you have read the book, it's basically the first chapter, it deals with that, like having the fear of failing, of having the fear of coming up with an idea and it doesn't work, or what are the different limitants or things that are stopping me from being successful with my business and with my ideas. But this book is also trying to abolish all the different things that may come to mind when we create an idea that is new or a company that is completely new and it's from our own authority. Let's start with the first thing that we're going to see in this book that you have read already, but is chapter 1, do you have what it takes? Okay, do you have what it takes? So a man who wins is the man who works, who neither labor nor trouble shirks, who uses his head, his hands, his eyes, and the man who wins is a man who tries, by Conrad Hilton. What is the meaning of this little quote? Well, not so little, it's too big. But the man who wins, we're going to break it apart into pieces to make sure that we understand it together. The man who wins is the man who works. Probably you have seen in life that there are many people, or you will see them along when you get to the university or higher levels of education, that there is always people that complains. They complain about everything. They complain that the government is not doing enough for them. They complain about this condition that they are in. They complain about the job that they are in, or they complain about many different things, that they don't have money, that they don't have the resources, etc. However, the man who wins is the man who works. It's the people that instead of complaining and trying to waste their time, trying to look for a reason or somebody to blame, they start working to change the reality. They start working to change what they live or to change the conditions in which they are. Therefore, if you work right now, you are having a resource that you can work it right now that is your product. When this pandemic situation finishes, you will have the opportunity to work it on your own. And maybe you may start asking yourself, okay, what am I going to do with that? Work it. If you work it, you will win eventually over time. You may have failures along the way, but you can win if you are steady and you continue diligently. Who neither labor nor trouble shrinks. This is really important because neither labor nor trouble shrinks. That means that doesn't matter if you fail, if you have problems, if you have a lot of work to do, that is not going to stop you in your ideas, or that is not going to be a detriment for you to accomplish whatever you want. If we were in the real world and we created this, well, you created a brand already, but you want to implement it in the real world, you will find many problems. Like, for example, that you don't have the money to produce in mass quantities. Like, for example, that people is not going to pay attention to the different things that you're selling, etc., etc. But that is not going to stop you. The guide or the people who wins is not going to be stopped by this. Or if that, to make sure that your company works and is successful, you have to work tons and tons of time, but that is not going to stop you either. Who uses his head, his hands, his eyes? The man who wins is the man who tries. So that means that use his head, hands, and his eyes. Why your head? Your head to come on with ideas, okay? To create new and different ideas that probably the world hasn't seen before, or as we saw in classes, not a new idea, but an idea that is old and that you can adapt to new circumstances. His eyes. What you see with your eyes, you can see the things that can work and the things that cannot work. Basically, your eyes are the window for you to witness the things that you want to project yourself on. Not your cell phone, but yourself on. For example, like this. If you have a person that you follow and you believe that is successful and you want to be like that person, your eyes are going to catch that and they are going to interpret that as a message, that that is the thing that you want to be. That is the self-image that you want. Therefore, your eyes is going to be really essential to see what path that you're going to take. And your hands. Why your hands? Because they are the primarily way in which you're going to make the things. Not only because you're going to work the things by hand, but because your hands were meant to create and to replicate and to work. Therefore, you can use these hands for many resources. If you're going to create something on your own, or if you're going to type something, write something, try to tell somebody about something or show a product, therefore they are essential. The man who wins is the man who tries. That means that the man that doesn't give up, or the women that doesn't give up in this case. We're talking about people that no matter how many times they have failed, if you have read the book, in the book, there is an example of Harrison Ford or many other people that have been successful even though they were old or they have many failures, but they never stop trying. That never stops whatsoever. So when we talk about this quote, we can get into details about the stages of beginning a business idea. We already did this at school, but we need to learn what are the different stages that we have been talking about. And there are many. For example, stage one is the right attitude, okay? That you keep the right attitude towards life and towards your business and the things that you do. We have the first point, that is drive and determination, including initiative, high levels of energy, and a very appetite for achievement. Remember what I told you the last time when we were at school and I was telling you my story of how did I pay for my university career, that I told you that I had hunger. Not hunger because I didn't have anything to eat. Well, sometimes I did, but the hunger for success. That is going to drive you in many different circumstances and situations for you to achieve whatever you want. First, include the initiative. What's the initiative? That is, nobody else is doing it, I will do it. I will be the one to lead the way. It doesn't matter if other people are slacking up or they are not doing their job. If I want to succeed, I will do it on my own. I don't care about the other people. High levels of energy. That means that you have the energy necessary to achieve whatever you want. It doesn't matter what it costs. An appetite for achievement, that you are hungry to try to get something for yourself, to make sure that you feel self-motivated and self-achieved after you completed something. Ambition. Harboring a first desire to succeed, as well as forming a substantial, realistic, and personal definition of exactly what success is. Different people have different definitions for success. I remember that not long time ago, I was talking to a friend and he told me, you know, for me, success is to have a family, a nice job, a nice car, to give everything to my kids that they need. That's it. That's success in my definition. That's what he told me. But there are other people that they will tell you, okay, success for me is to earn millions and millions of dollars. But something that we need to know is that it needs to be substantial, something that fills you in. That's why people have different definitions of success. That fills you in, that keeps you motivated. Realistic, that means that it's something you can achieve, okay? Something that you can do on your own. And finally, the personal definition. That means that you all have your definition of success, and it's going to be vary from person to person, depending on who you ask. Intelligence, the desire or attitude to gather, interpret, and prioritize information. What's the most important thing that you need to know? How are you going to know it? And how are you going to collect the information that you need? Like, for example, you want to launch a new product to the market. You need to be intelligent, trying to gather the information. How many of these products exist? How many companies are there that they have the same idea that I have? How can I get that information? Therefore, when I know that they are offering, then I can prioritize the things that I want to offer that they are not. Okay, that is intelligence. Commercial intelligence, the motivation to know how to scan the business environment for weakness, stress, and opportunity. How to scan the business environments I'm talking about, like, for example, how to know if your product will be successful or not based on the trends. What is based on the trends? That means that if people are, you make an investigation to see how much people buy this product. You see an investigation to see what do people want from this product exactly, and what is the place of the circumstances in which it's going to be successful to launch it. Like, for example, you're not going to launch an ice cream brand in winter. Nobody's going to buy an ice cream in winter. Probably some people here and there, yes, but normally they won't. Therefore, we need to find the opportunity, the best opportunity to launch a business and to create something new. Confidence, the courage to be decisive and assured, not arrogant of your abilities. Decisive, to take decisions when they matter the most, when they are the most important and relevant at all times. And to be assured, not arrogant. Arrogant, that means that you believe that everything you do is correct and nobody can correct you or give you some pieces of advice. We need to be humble. So, curiosity, the innate interest in the world and how it works. Have you ever wondered where the great business ideas come from or the great products come from, like a computer, a TV, headphones, and everything? Well, comes from people that had the interest on how the things work, how the different things work. I don't know if you have heard, but there is a channel that I would recommend you to watch if you're interested that is called The King of Random. The YouTuber was in the news like a couple of months ago because he passed away. But when he started the channel, he did it because he said that when he wanted to go to university, there wasn't a career that was going to teach him about electricity, chemistry, carpentry, or many other things, many other fields, right? In which you can do things with your hands. Therefore, he started investigating on himself how to do the things, how to install an electric wire, how to repair a fridge, and many other things you can imagine. And he said that in YouTube, he started looking for different videos and everything on how to do it, but they were poor quality or they lacked some information or they were lacking some explanation. Therefore, he decided, okay, we'll have the initiative and the curiosity. I had the curiosity to know how things work, how things are made. Nobody's doing it great. I have the initiative to do it. And then he decided to have the confidence on his skills of what he had learned to show the world how to do it. That is the things that we need. Curiosity is going to drive you to be one of the most essential businessmen and women in the planet, because you will always be investigating, trying to get how things work and how they can work better. And finally, the will to win, the determination to come out on top rather than just participate. Like in this life, no matter in what ambit you are not a participant, you're a winner. That means that you have the determination to always be on top, always be the best that you can be, either in business or in studies or whatever you want to achieve with life. Always be the best. This is not just something that you can apply to the business life, but your life in general. Like you just want to be just a participant. You don't want to be just another worker that goes to a regular job from 8 to 4 and start doing the same things all over and over. If you want to succeed, if you want to come out on top, if you want to be the person that everybody talks to, this is going to drive you over that. And with that, with just 1 minute left, we're going to stop over here the explanation. So right now I will stop recording and